I think we'll start the session then, if that's okay with everyone. Hi everyone, welcome to this session on adjusting to university life and learning. My name is Evie and I am a second year student at UCL. I'm studying the BA English. And yeah, I'm here today to talk to you kind of all about university life and learning and how to adapt to the changes that presents, because university is a big change, but there are lots and lots of things that you can do to cope with that change and make the most out of your time here. So today I'm going to be focusing mainly on the differences between learning at school and university, giving you my top tips for maximising your learning experience at uni, as well as ways to cope with living away from home and new things like that, and kind of all the things that presents. There'll also be a chance at the end of the session for you guys to ask any questions that you might have. So feel free to post your questions in the chat either as the session goes on, or you can wait until the end. So yeah, a little bit about myself. As I mentioned, I'm a second year studying English here at UCL. My sort of main hobbies include reading, obviously, because I'm an English student. I'm also really into drama and theatre, as well as writing. So in that little table there is just kind of a brief overview of what I got up to in my first year at UCL in terms of extracurriculars and some of the responsibilities I have this year. So these are all different societies at UCL that I got involved with in my first year. So Drama Society, I'm quite involved again with this year. Pi Media, which is UCL's journalist society. So if you guys have any society related questions at all, because I know it can be a minefield trying to decide which ones you want to join, you can pop them in the chat and I'll answer them for you at the end or go into a bit more detail about that. But yeah, so let's move on to university learning. So what do you need to know? So there are lots of different things that are different about university learning. One of those is kind of the style in which you are taught. So your teaching at university tends to fall under three categories, at least in the arts and humanities department usually. So the first kind of teaching is a lecture. This is where essentially, well, I mean, in pre-COVID-19 times, a professor would stand at the front of a big lecture hall with lots and lots of students in it. They will deliver a lecture to the hall full of students for about 50 minutes, usually accompanied by a presentation, kind of like this one. And your job as a student is to sit and take notes on what the professor's saying. So essentially, it's going to work the same way this year, just via Zoom or kind of whatever platform your lecturer prefers. They might also give you a handout with sort of recommended reading. My handouts for lectures tend to have like quotes from the text that I'm studying on. And then what's, I guess, kind of the opposite of a lecture is a seminar. And this is kind of smaller group teaching. It can be from anywhere between 10 and 25 students usually. And this is much more discussion based. So you'll have the opportunity to ask any questions that you have, kind of raise your own points of discussion, and also debate with other students. I find that English Lit seminars are very, very, very interesting, mostly because of what other students contribute. And I find I learn a lot from discussing things with other people on my course. And your seminar leader will kind of facilitate that discussion. Some seminar leaders get more involved than others. Some kind of give you prompts. And you probably will also have to do a bit more preparation for a seminar. So for me, that's usually pre-reading, answering a set of questions, kind of close reading a passage. But like I say, that will vary from what degree you're doing. And then the third kind of method of teaching is a tutorial. So this kind of varies, again, much more between departments. I'm very lucky in the English department that I get one-to-one tutorials, which I know is something that's very, very rare at UCL. And especially at the moment, it's really a blessing. But essentially, any type of tutorial is just, again, very small group teaching, which are more focused, usually just a few of you, focusing kind of on the needs of your group and kind of, I guess, it's very dependent on your department as to what you'll cover in the tutorial as well. It might go over things that you possibly don't understand. So that can be really helpful. So another big change from school to university is you'll have a lot more free time, which can be really daunting at first. And because you have so much free time, especially as an arts and humanities students, generally we don't have a ton of contact hours. So it's really important to manage your free time effectively and make sure that you're making the most out of it. So examples of things you can do outside your teaching hours, seminar prep, as I mentioned, that usually takes up a good amount of my time, whether that's answering questions relating to the set text for me that week or reading specific critical reading or further reading. Again, extra reading that's outside of what's required. UCL has an amazing online library catalogue, which I've provided a link to at the end of the session, which you guys can have a look at. They have like tens of thousands of resources on there, so that's always where I go if I want to explore an idea a little bit further. Also consolidating your work, just going over everything you've done that week, pinpointing things that you maybe didn't understand or that you found a bit challenging. And also as an arts and humanities student, essay writing is a big thing. That's essentially applying what you've learned from your classes and your own research to assessment. So essays, again, vary between departments. I personally write essays every fortnight, which is quite a lot. Other humanities degrees do less essays, but kind of more together. Mine are kind of more spread out. So again, that varies from course to course. So my top tips for making the most of university learning. The first one is to take note of your environment. So this might sound like a really kind of silly tip, but it's something I found to be so important, especially starting the new year on kind of Zoom university. I find getting out of bed and getting dressed is a really simple thing that you can do, but it makes such a difference to your mindset and your productivity. I have a lot of 9 a.m. lectures this term, and it'll be so easy to do them in bed. But I know that if I do that, I'll end up kind of lazing around and I won't be in my most productive mindset. So just getting dressed, putting on clothes that are comfortable, but that you still feel like you've got dressed, so not pajamas. It's amazing how much it can change your mindset and make you feel much more ready to tackle the day. Also, think about your workspace, you know, your desk in wherever you're staying, whether you're at home or whether you're in university halls, as I imagine some of you are. You're going to be spending a lot of time at your desk, so you want to make sure that you're inspired by your surroundings, as it can have a big impact on the way in which you work and how much you get done. So create a comfortable space. So things like having plants. I like having plants in my room. It makes me feel a bit more kind of, I guess it gives the room a bit of life, which is quite nice. Also having photos from home or photos of your family and friends. I also find little motivational quote postcards to be a really kind of cheesy thing, but they do really work for me to just remind me why I'm doing this, you know, why I'm at university. Yeah, so that's my first tip. The second one kind of leans on from this, but that's to establish a routine. As I mentioned, you'll have a lot of free time at university, and even more so this year because a lot of things, well, virtually everything for this term is online. So it's a really good idea to just kind of create a rough plan for how you want to structure your day. So this is an example of the routine that I usually have, which is kind of waking up reasonably early. I'd say don't force this, you know, if you set an alarm and you think, oh, I just want an extra half an hour in bed, then give that time to yourself. You know, it's important at university that you really take care of yourself. And, you know, sleeping in when you want to is totally okay. But I find waking up reasonably early kind of always makes me more productive. But again, find out what works best for you. I know a lot of my friends who they work best in the evening or at night. So it really just depends on kind of what you prefer. Again, another really important tip is exercise. This is really good for both your physical and mental health, I think. Just keeping you active, you know, keep moving. It can really be good for your brain as well. Breaking up your day into study slots is another tip. I find doing kind of one slot of studying in the morning, then taking a big break for lunch and having some kind of downtime. and then doing another slot in the afternoon. Also linking on from that is to go out of the house. Fresh air and a change of scenery honestly can make such a difference to your productivity. So even if that's going for a walk, I have a Costa down the road from me, which I'm frequenting quite a lot at the moment, because also coffee, I feel like every student loves coffee. It's just kind of a given, and I definitely do. So yeah, and you'll probably find that when you come back, you'll be feeling more fresh and ready to get on with work again. And downtime is so important. I don't think I can stress this enough. It's that you've got to allow yourself time to do things that you really enjoy, and try to separate your studies from those extra activities. So relaxing things like watching TV, socializing, talking to friends and family, and reading. It just means that when you study, you're going to be really focused, and then when it comes to having those downtime activities, you're really going to enjoy them. Again, this is kind of an example of a routine. If your routine goes out the window one day and you have a really lazy day, that's okay. Just take each day as it comes in these first few weeks of university and find out what works for you. But yeah, establishing a routine has just been really, really good for me, especially in my first year, with kind of maximizing my productivity and getting as much work done as possible. So my third tip is to organize yourselves. Again, this links back to having a lot of free time. Buying a planner is a really good thing at the moment. So many shops, stationery shops, have student discounts, so do take advantage of that. This is really useful for keeping track of when your classes are, keeping track of any preparation or any homeworks, any assignments that you have to do, making to-do lists for the day for yourself, writing down any deadlines, any events that you're doing, and just keeping it all in one place is really, really useful for staying on top of things. And also Google Calendar is an amazing thing. I've got so much use out of that. You can link it to your email, which is really good. So if you're being emailed Zoom links and things, you can pop them into the calendar, which is really useful, because I feel like every student at the moment is like scrambling at 5 to 9 to find their Zoom link. So if you have it all in one place, it's just really easy. Also, lots of societies use Google Calendar to coordinate things. So if you're thinking of getting involved with any societies, that's definitely something I would recommend kind of looking at. It's useful because you can just group everything into one place. So yeah, and like I say, feel free to ask any society related questions that you guys have at the end. So my fourth tip is a weekly review. Now this, I would say, is really good for kind of adjusting to university learning and the amount of content that you'll have, because I feel like my biggest challenge or change from when I moved from school to university was the amount I was expected to cover. The BA English first year, it covers a very broad range of texts from across different literary periods and genres, which is really amazing for a kind of rounded, developed understanding of the history of literature. But it also at times was very overwhelming because we were just spread so thinly. So I developed this kind of weekly review technique, I guess, and I just found it really useful. So pick a day in the week that you've got time to review what you've covered that week. So for me, I try to keep this the same day, so either a Thursday or a Friday, just because it's towards the end of the week. So what I usually do is I'll create one big Word document, and I'll just gather all the information that I have on that particular text, or for you, it might be a particular topic. So I'll type up and refine the lecture and seminar notes that I made from that week, kind of highlighting anything that I want to follow up further or anything I didn't understand, adding any summary notes or reading from further research, and essentially just condensing it all into one place. And that way it's really easy to establish the things that you don't understand. They become much clearer, and then it's easier to follow them up. This also makes things a lot easier when you come to revise for exams, which, don't freak out me talking about exams right now. I know they are way in the future. But if you kind of start consolidating as soon as you start studying, you will honestly thank yourself later. It just becomes easier kind of having this document as a little bit of a refresher. But you might also find that you only need to do this review every fortnight or every month. Just kind of test the waters and see what works for you. But it's a really useful thing to kind of keep on track with all your content. And my final tip is to kind of immerse yourself in your degree and find your niche. So the great thing about studying at university is you're most likely only doing one subject. So you've really got the room to kind of, I guess, just find what you're truly interested in within your field. So research and explore what you find interesting. I mean, UCL is such a kind of richly academic environment, and there are so many resources that are on offer for you. Like I mentioned, UCL Library, the online catalogue, as well as the in-person libraries, are absolutely amazing. You'll find literally anything you need in there. But also other academic institutions that are kind of minutes walk from campus. You've got the British Library, British Museum, and Senate House Library, all of which do kind of free membership or reader pass for University of London students. So I mean, it's an amazing time to take advantage of such resources when you're a student and it's free. So I would definitely recommend doing that. I really enjoyed going to the British Library a lot last year and using their reading rooms. And, you know, find your passion. University is the best time to find what you're truly interested in. So explore new topics or new avenues of research or new themes within your field, and find what you're truly excited about. So as an example, for me, I'm really interested in the Victorian period of literature and also kind of race-related literature and how that's developed throughout history. And I kind of really found that niche when I got to university and had the time to explore those things, because during my A-levels, I just didn't have any time at all to kind of do any academic research. And again, online university allows for even more free time. This is also a really useful thing to carry forward to interviews if you go for kind of any internships or jobs eventually after university, to kind of show what sets you apart from other people that have perhaps done the same degree as you. So it's definitely one that I'd recommend thinking about. So I'm now going to move on to talking kind of about what's new about university life in particular. So I've spoken a little bit about the learning side, but also a huge thing about university is that you are living away from home and your life's probably going to be very different. So starting off with societies, as I mentioned, there are literally hundreds of societies at UCL, so many different things to get involved with, like sports, art societies, politics, culture, and that's kind of just a small snippet of what's on offer. And despite the current climate and things moving online, societies are still providing a ton of events for you to get involved with. So I definitely recommend going onto the Students' Union website, which I've linked at the end of the session, just having a browse and see what you think you'd like to get involved with. From my experience this year, a lot of societies are doing remote membership, which is completely free. So it means you can access their online events for free, which is amazing if you're not quite sure that you'll like it, but you want to kind of test the waters. Societies are also a really great place to socialize, and I've made some of my best friends at university through societies. They're a really great chance to meet new people and kind of feel part of a community, and I think that's even more important this year. And also keeping busy will kind of make you feel less daunted about living away from home, and it means you won't get lonely. So I'd really recommend either just joining in with socials, things like online quiz nights, are a really great way to kind of socialize. Also, living independently. I don't think this is talked about enough, how much of a huge deal this actually is. Doing things like cooking for yourself, doing your own laundry was a massive shock to me when I got to university, and I'm incredibly lucky with my parents who just did everything for me at home. So it was a bit of a shock. With cooking for yourself, I really find that making a meal plan at the beginning of the week is really useful, just because it means that I don't spend crazy amounts on my food shop, and it also means I don't waste food, which is obviously great. You can find lots of easy student recipes and things like that online. And yeah, experiment a bit with your cooking, and you'll often find it's quite enjoyable. I think a little bit therapeutic. Maybe that's a bit sad, I'm not sure, but it's sometimes fun. Moving on to homesickness. Now, this was something I really struggled with, because I'm very close with my family at home, and I found it really hard moving away from home and not being around them all the time. But, you know, in the 21st century, we have the absolute wonder of FaceTime, which just makes such a difference for me, because it just kind of feel like you're there with the people you're talking to. So yeah, just touch base with people at home, check in, let them know how you are, because chances are they're worrying about you as much as you're kind of feeling homesick. But also, you know, throw yourself into university life, keep yourself busy. The more you get involved with and the more you put yourself out there, the easier you'll find the transition and the less you'll think about missing home. So I definitely just recommend trying to, yeah, throw yourself out there. Even under the circumstances this year, you'll definitely meet new people by doing that. I also find keeping like a few bits from home in my room, like photos of me and my friends and family, is just kind of comforting and a little way to kind of help you adjust to living on your own. And finally, living with new people. So most of you are probably living in halls this year, and that's kind of living on a corridor with entirely new people, which is a bit daunting. But I'd say just be friendly and chatty, you know, that way you'll make friends organically. But also, you know, don't worry if you don't click immediately with the people in your flat or in your halls. I made most of my friends on my course or through societies. I didn't really have kind of my good friends in my halls. So don't worry or panic if you don't click with the people in your hall straight away, because there are plenty of opportunities to make friends. We've actually got another session, I believe it's on Wednesday, where another student ambassador, Katie, will be delivering a whole session about how to make friends at university. So that will be really useful if you wanted to follow up with that. But yeah, so that's kind of it from me on the chatting side. This is a little slide of some further resources, as I mentioned, the Students' Union website for more societies and the library catalogue. There's also an article which is really great, which goes into a bit more detail about the differences between school and university. So feel free to take a photo of this slide, and then you can follow up the links yourself. So I'll just give you a few seconds to do that. So Alice said, do you have any tips for adjusting to longer length essays? Yeah, great question, Alex. Thank you. So yeah, it is a little bit of a challenge. I would say just make sure you do your research. You'll find that when you have to kind of flesh out essays a little bit more, it's really good to have some material on hand of kind of different scholars and critics and what they've said and how you can kind of tie that into your argument. And I sometimes find that going a little bit into what a critic said about a text gives me a bit more meat to play with in the essay. And you will get used to it. It's scary at first, but the more you do it, honestly, the more you'll get used to it. I also try and plan out my essays beforehand. So just kind of add any quotes or any, like I say, critics that I'm going to put in. And that way, if you plan it, you'll get an idea for how much content you have. And when you start writing, you'll then find the gaps, rather than just started writing straight away without making a plan. So I definitely find that making a plan keeps me on track and lets me know whether I'm going to reach the word count or whether I need to do a little bit more research. So hopefully that answers your question a little bit. Yeah. What was the hardest thing you found about adjusting to university life? That's a good question. I think it was perhaps having so much free time, especially for me in my first year as an English student. I had 3 days a week of contact hours. So I had 2 free days where I had nothing. And at first I kind of felt like, well, what am I supposed to do with this time? And then kind of as I got into the year and as my workload kind of piled up, I guess, it's easy to feel quite overwhelmed because you've got so much time and so much to do. And sometimes it's really hard to reconcile the two if you haven't got kind of a clear plan of your day. So that was kind of my main challenge. But as I mentioned previously, you know, just trying to structure your day a little bit. So even when I had days off, I would try and get up at the normal time I would usually have lectures at, and go to the library or go to a coffee shop to work, and soon found that I was building a routine for myself, and suddenly the free time was slowly disappearing as I was kind of having more stuff to do. So yeah, hopefully that answers that question. What would you say is the best thing about starting at university, and what did you find the biggest adjustment? Yeah, so I've kind of touched on the biggest adjustment, but I think the best thing about starting at university is just the amount that you can do at university. You know, I think there's never a time in your life when you can do so much. You know, you're long in the world of work and stuck in a job, but at university, you know, you can study your degree, which is really exciting. You know, if you're really interested in your subject, there's so much you can do in terms of research and kind of finding your passion. You can do societies, you can meet new people, you can explore London. You know, London is such an amazing city to be a student in, and there are so many opportunities for students. When I kind of tell people at home all these things I'm involved in at university, they're like, how do you have time? And I say to them, that's the thing, university is such a rare time where you just have the opportunity to do so much stuff. So I definitely say that's the best, most exciting thing about starting university, is all the opportunities that you'll have. So Tim asks, on essays, have you got any tips for dealing with deadlines? What do you do when time is running out and you are finding it hard to do your work? Okay, yeah, so thank you for your question, Tim. Tips for dealing with deadlines, I would say definitely kind of plan your time. So like I say, I have fortnightly essays. So when I get my essay, I immediately mark the deadline, and I'll look at kind of how much time I have to do the essay. Usually I'll split it into a week of research and planning and a week of writing, because I kind of like to do my first draft and then revise it a few times just so it's the best it can be. And yeah, just planning your time, I would say, is the best way to meet deadlines. And when time is running out, believe me, we've all been there, and you're finding it hard to do your work. I would say if you've got a lot of work and your kind of deadlines are pressing, just make yourself a to-do list of everything you need to do on a post-it note, in your planner, literally on a scrap of paper, and put down the days that you need to do things by, kind of how urgent they are. And that way you'll be able to see physically really clearly what you have to do. You won't forget about anything, and it'll mean that you get all your tasks done to the best of your ability by the deadline. So yeah, definitely write things down. It's so much easier, clears your mind when you can see kind of a physical representation of what you have to do. So next question is, what is your favorite thing about UCL? That's a really hard question. I love so many things about UCL. I guess there are two things. UCL specifically, I would say, is the academic environment. Everyone who studies at UCL is so passionate about what they're studying, and you can tell that everyone's really worked hard to be here. And that's such an amazing feeling, to be surrounded by people who are all really excited about their subject and who are really all kind of invested in what they're learning. And it's kind of a really positive environment, makes you want to work hard as well. And then the second thing I think is the location and where it is. The kind of great unique thing about UCL is it's kind of like a campus uni, but also within a city. So the majority, as you guys will probably know, the majority of the UCL campus is based in Bloomsbury. And so it feels like UCL's got its own little hub in Bloomsbury, but you're also kind of right off of Tottenham Court Road and Russell Square, and kind of 10 minutes down the road from Covent Garden. And you are kind of so right smack bang in the middle of the city, which is just incredible. And that means that there are so many things to do and so many opportunities that arise that I don't think that many other students living outside of London get. And I think that's definitely become apparent to me. There's lots of things that I've done outside of university, and I've got those opportunities from being at UCL and being a student in London. So yeah, definitely the location is just a fantastic thing. It's really good. So yeah, let me know if you have any more questions, guys, about anything really. They've all been really useful questions so far. anything about societies or kind of, again, teaching. Also feel free to let me know what courses you are all doing and how you're feeling about them. If you have any specific advice on humanities degrees in particular. Catherine asked, have you got any tips for cooking on a budget? That's a difficult one. I would say I like to meal prep quite a lot. So for example, last week I made some chili and I made a chicken curry. So I think I made about 4 portions of chili and 2 of the curry, and that lasted me for the whole week. So bulk cooking is really good because it just means that you don't waste food, and you also aren't buying like loads and loads of different meals. But also you can freeze stuff. So I froze some chili last week that I've still got in the freezer, which I'm actually gonna have for dinner tonight. So that's a really good way to cook on a budget. You can find lots of kind of useful student meals online. I know a lot of people make YouTube videos about student cooking as well, so that's probably worth looking at. But it is a lot easier than you would think. Once you get into a routine of cooking as well and kind of figure out how much money you like to spend a week on food, you'll soon get into the habit and kind of know what's what. And each student spends different amounts of money on food, and each student buys kind of different foods. I know personally for me, I don't eat loads, whereas I know people in my halls last year literally ate so much food. So it really just depends on you, I think. Yeah, like I say, any more questions? Tim asks, what sort of comments do you get from the lecturers on your essays? Okay, thanks for your question, Tim. So like I say, I have one-to-one tutorials in the English department, which is really useful because my tutor will go over my essay with me. The main thing that they kind of mark me on is my argument for the essay and kind of how well that comes across and how well I'm answering the question. I think that's a big tip for an essay is you might write a fantastic essay, really well written, really well researched, but if you're not answering the question, then you won't get a good mark, if that makes sense, which it can sound really kind of simple. But the amount of times that I've written an essay and my tutor said, well, read the first paragraph, are you answering the question? And I'm thinking, no, I'm actually not. So that's one thing that they'll say. Also, in my first year, some of it was kind of stylistic things, so like referencing, kind of language that I use, getting used to writing in a more formal academic way. Yeah, that sort of thing. And also kind of, I guess, with me specifically thinking about literature and kind of whether they had the same view or kind of them thinking about where I got my argument from and what my kind of train of thought was. But hopefully that answers your question. It's really useful. Thank you. Do you think you've got better at it? Yes, definitely. I mean, I read my first tutorial essay from first year a couple of weeks ago and I thought, wow, that's actually pretty bad. And obviously at the time it wasn't bad for me, but now that I've done a year worth of essays and I've learned so much and I've kind of found my writing style and found my routine of what works for me, I've improved massively. So I definitely say just have confidence in yourself and trust that the more you do it, the better you'll get at it, definitely. Do you have any tips for preparing for a seminar? Yeah, so I would say that preparing for a seminar is such a good idea because you don't want to go into a seminar kind of not knowing what you're doing. And the more you prepare and the more you know what you're talking about, the more you'll get out of the seminar as well. So my seminars are usually on one set text. So obviously start off with, I'll read the text. I usually read kind of some summary notes about it. And then I'll look at kind of who the main scholars or critics were of that literary period or genre or that particular text and look at what they said about it. And kind of, I would say with all your university work, particularly seminar preparation, if you're reading someone's opinion, also think about kind of absorb that information, but also think about, well, what do I think about that? You know, do I agree with that? Or do I actually think, no, I don't agree with that. I think this. So you want to be constantly kind of being critical and evaluating others' opinions. And if you've had any questions that your seminar leader has given you, kind of think through those in detail. And again, think about your kind of own opinion and think, well, right, if somebody asked me my opinion on this, what would it be? And, how have I got there? So what scholars have I looked at? Kind of who do I agree with? Who do I disagree with? And I would say kind of just get your notes all in order, keep everything in the same place, in the same notebook or folder, just so when you're in the seminar, you can flick through. And if there was something that you needed to add to, or something that you think, yeah, that's actually a really good point that I can bring to this discussion. And my top tip for a seminar is just, put yourself out there and be willing to discuss things. It can be so daunting. And I know that when I was in my first year, had my first seminar, I was terrified and I was shaking and sweating every time I thought, maybe I'll contribute now, but no, I'm too scared. It can be really overwhelming and daunting. But actually, the more you contribute in a class, the more you'll get out of it 100%, because you're kind of really actively engaging. And when you're kind of put on the spot, it can feel like the world is ending and you just want the ground to swallow you up. I've been there before. But actually, in hindsight, it's the best thing. It's the best thing to be challenged, and because you really learn from it. So yeah, definitely don't be afraid to kind of raise your own points of discussion and speak your mind, because that's the great thing about university teaching, is seminars in particular are very discussion based. So it really gives you the opportunity to raise your thoughts. So yeah, I think if there are no more questions, perhaps we can wrap up the session there. Oh, we've got another one. What suggestions will you give non-native English speakers to adapt to the new environment? Thank you. Yeah, this is a really hard one, and I always say to kind of my friends who are international students and English isn't their first language, that I'm just amazed by that, because I'm an English student, I only speak English, and I just think for international students to come to UCL and kind of be able to adapt to the environment and having not spoken the language as their first language, I just think it's absolutely incredible. So well done you, first of all, because I just think it's such an achievement. I would say kind of, I guess, sort of do your reading, read widely, you take advantage of the library. Being at university and being in London is a really great way to kind of improve your language skills as well. And also you will naturally surrounded by people who are speaking English. So yeah, don't worry about it too much. Just kind of do as much reading as you can, but also you'll find that the more you're here, or the more you're interacting with other English students, you'll soon find that you're not even thinking about it. So yeah, definitely don't worry. But thank you for your question as well. So if there are, I don't know if there are any more questions. If not, I think, yeah, we'll wrap up the session there. So thank you so much everyone for joining. I really, really appreciate you giving up your time to come and listen to me this afternoon. I really, really hope it was helpful and that you can apply some of the tips I've given you to your university learning. Hopefully you can get a lot out of the resources that I put on that slide as well. Hopefully you guys took a photo of that. And yeah, we've got Katie's session tomorrow, which is all about making friends at university. So definitely have a look on our website for the link to that. And yeah, good luck with your first few weeks of term. I wish you all the best. And yeah, have a good few weeks. It was lovely talking to you guys. All the best. Thank you.